from California is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. First, let me thank the chair of the Financial Services Committee, Mr. Barney Frank, for all of the time and attention he has placed on making this our #1 priority, dealing with the aftermath of Katrina. He said to me and to all of the members of my subcommittee, move as quickly as you possibly can. Get the hearings going. Let's get a bill to the floor. And because of his interest and because of his support, we're here today on the floor, indeed addressing many of those issues that should have been addressed a long time ago. And I thank Mr. Frank so very much for that. It has been exactly 2 weeks since the Committee on Financial Services considered H.R. 1227, the Gulf Coast Hurricane Housing Recovery Act of 2007. By a vote of 50 to 16, the committee passed the bill. I want to thank again Chairman Frank for supporting the bill through markup. I want to thank the members of our committee from both sides of the aisle who voted for this bill. There are also many members of Congress who have expressed major concerns about the rebuilding process in the Gulf region post-Katrina and support this bill. This bill addresses many of the obstacles to the rebuilding process in the Gulf region. Prior to consideration of this bill, the Committee on Financial Services held hearings on post-Katrina housing issues, followed by 2 days of subcommittee-filled hearings in New Orleans, Louisiana, and Gulfport, Mississippi. The bill before you today represents consensus on one major issue, that is, for the rebuilding process in the Gulf region to ever begin, we need to address the affordable housing crisis in the Gulf region by returning people to their homes. Whether it is a home in need of major repair, a public housing unit damaged by the storm, or a home totally destroyed, every person who desires to live in the Gulf region must be given an opportunity to rebuild and to return home. We learned through hours of testimony that the reasons for failure in the Gulf region related to the rebuilding process were often bureaucratic, administrative, as well as a consequence of inadequate post-storm planning by the federal government. The hurricanes hit the Gulf region in August of 2005, leaving behind unparalleled devastation. Many have acknowledged their frustration with the speed and pace of the recovery. Others realize that the efforts of Congress to provide $110 billion to the Gulf region have not necessarily resulted in money into the right people's hands, and I could not agree more. However, this bill does not place blame on anyone, but rather recognizes the need to bring efficiency to the process, whether through administration of the Road Home Program or the Federal Public Housing Program, so that persons in need are assisted with the financial resources that we approved for them months ago. I had one goal when I introduced this bill, and that was to see the Gulf region rebuilt while addressing the affordable housing crisis in the region. The hurricanes destroyed nearly 300,000 units of housing in the Gulf region, affordable rental units, homes of low and moderate income families, and public housing. The hurricanes did not discriminate when it came to destroying the housing stock in the Gulf region. No income group was spared. Whether a family lived in public housing, high-priced homes, or affordable rental housing in the Gulf region, they were all affected alike. Many of the residents of the major affected areas like New Orleans and elsewhere have not recovered from the storms, and thousands are still displaced and living in other parts of the country months after the storms, rather than their former communities. While all of these persons may not choose to return or even wish to return, we must provide those who do with an opportunity to return. H.R. 1227 is about rebuilding communities to allow people to return to the Gulf region. We should not have to rebuild communities one at a time in the Gulf, and in some cases that is what it will take. What would be worse is not rebuilding any of the communities in the Gulf region, and that is the path that we are currently on. Housing is the key to everything in the Gulf region. No housing means zero communities. No communities will mean that rebuilding is impossible in the Gulf region. This bill will address a number of issues. The bill resolves the HUD FEMA dispute by allowing the Hazard Mitigation Fund to be combined with the Community Development Block Grant Funds. In addition, the bill requires monthly reports by the state of Louisiana on the number of households assisted through the programs funded with CDBG funds for the Road Home program. By eliminating the prohibition against the match requirement, CDBG supplemental funds can be used in conjunction with other federal programs, including those administered by FEMA. In addition, the bill also provides for reimbursements related to an entitlement community's use of the Community Development Block Grant Funds to provide rental assistance to displaced persons. Public housing residents have suffered tremendously because of the hurricanes. Many public housing residents are displaced with no reasonable housing option. Living in trailers and doubling up do not qualify as reasonable housing options. This bill would provide a means to return for the greater of 3,000 or those who respond to the survey who are former New Orleans public housing residents. It also establishes the one-for-one replacement principle by requiring a plan to be approved by HUD and the residents prior to any wholesale demolition or redevelopment efforts of public housing units. Under the bill, HUD is required to complete a survey of displaced public housing residents to determine whether they want to return to public housing in New Orleans. In addition, the bill requires HUD to report on any proposed conversion of public housing units located in areas affected by the hurricanes, as well as comply with the bill's other requirements related to public housing. The bill addresses disaster vouchers and project-based rental assistance. It extends disaster vouchers for 3 months until January 2008. Project-based vouchers would be protected where a project was destroyed or is in need of substantial rehabilitation. The bill clarifies the voucher allocation formula by requiring HUD to make appropriate adjustments consistent with the funding year 2007 continuing resolution. In addition, the bill requires a number of proactive measures related to vouchers that will ensure no one is left without access to housing as a result of hurricanes. Further, Title IV of the bill would provide for the reimbursement of landlords who suffered damages related to commitments made by FEMA in conjunction with providing rental units to displaced residents. Without their commitment to house displaced families, what can best be described as a tragedy would have become a 21st century horror story. I'm pleased that the members of the House are in the position to speed up the recovery and rebuilding process in the Gulf region by supporting this bill. This bill is a small investment to make sure that the $110 billion we have spent thus far is not squandered. Unfortunately, renters and homeowners alike have suffered in the Gulf region for too many months. I believe this bill will bring much needed relief to those persons who have suffered the most. Again, I'd like to thank Barney Frank, our chairman, for the tremendous work that he's done. I'd like to thank all of the members of our subcommittee and of the entire committee, and I want to thank Ms. Biggert, the ranking member on the opposite side of the aisle, for the cooperation. She went to New Orleans, she sat in those hearings, and she visited those public housing projects, and she has as much knowledge about this as anyone. So I'm thankful that we're at this point today, and I would ask for an aye vote on this legislation. I yield back the balance of my time.